yeah, frankly, I think not everyone needs a flagship. No, it can't run the plugins. No, it can't run the amp models. No, it's not got a touchscreen. No, it's not your full Quad Cortex experience. But in a lot of ways, I actually think it's kind of a better product. Let me know your thoughts on that.
This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
The old Nano Cortex came along this week. I think it's been quite polarising, so in between vomiting I've decided to make this video. I did take delivery of this yesterday. People that watch the channel might know that I've had some criticisms maybe of the Quad Cortex over the years, and the neural not necessarily. That's, I guess, a whole different thing, you know, pre-orders and saying things that would be possible, which still really are not even possible now. But that's kind of besides the point, and I think I've been interested to see what some people think of the Nano Cortex. I've had a couple of friends kind of drop in to my DMs and say I was going to order one. So one of the kind of deal breakers for Sam was that it doesn't have an overdrive in front that you can switch on or off in terms of the effects blocks. Which I guess is an interesting choice. So Kent said, you know, fixed signal chain, no overdrive, lack of effects, no amp models, just captures, can't run X plugins, no controlling via computer, only phone app. That was kind of just off the top of his head. And he said it seems like a much more expensive Tone X pedal that's being propped up by Neural's previous reputation and the influencer onslaught, which I think all of that is fair. I do feel like this is taking a little bit of a bashing from some people, and so in this video I kind of wanted to talk about what it was that impressed me about this out of the box. I'm not being paid by Neural, obviously. They So I thought it was a big ask for Neural to be able to bring out a device with 2 buttons, no screen, and for it to be something that actually works, like, well. And I was all ready to sort of, you know, set up camera and show my exact first experience, and, you know, if there was trouble connecting with it, then I would have shown you that. If it was problematic, if it was confusing, I'd have shown you that. It was none of those things. It was really straightforward experience. You know, I've done videos with like Boss Katana, not Boss Katana, but yes, Boss Katana, but also Boss Waza Airs, where it actually takes quite a lot of effort to get those things connected up. This is really simple, just hold exit and capture, comes up on your phone. Really seamless integration with that phone thing. So for me, what I like about the Nano Cortex is actually it's kind of not really like anything out there. The Quad Cortex, I felt, was really quite derivative and ends up being a little bit confusing, and I think this can be seen in the responses to the Quad Cortex when that first came out, where people were just like, the amp modeling doesn't sound that great. I'm only really using the capture side, and that was a very common thing. Like, why do the captures sound much better than the amp models? That was a thing that people were saying back along. So what the Nano Cortex is, essentially, is a cheaper way to get into what I think has been the most interesting and best part of the Quad Cortex without any of the other stuff. So I did gig the Quad Cortex one time, and I ran it in scenes mode, and basically they've got this hybrid mode now where you can have like 4 stomps and 4 scenes, or vice versa, or 4 presets. You don't have spillover between presets on the Quad Cortex, so essentially it does reward you just using scenes, which are like snapshots. Generally, with a Quad Cortex, I think what I'd be doing now would be just using 4 snapshots and maybe stomps as well. So I'd have 4 snapshots along the bottom, so I'd have like a rhythm, a lead, clean, and then a clean with a delay. I think that's probably how I would have ended up gigging the Quad Cortex had I kept one. As it happens, it broke. That's another story for another time. I was very surprised when they figured this out. With just 2 switches, is basically pretty much as functional as that, and also more functional than my favourite modeler, probably the HX Stomp with 3 buttons. Because essentially, with these 4 scenes, basically, or presets is what they call them, but you can think of them like scenes. You can switch between 4 captures. I think if you ended up hooking it up with MIDI, you could get access to even more, but even with just the device itself, what that means is, and I'll show you this now, I guess, foot switch 1, my rhythm and my lead, and then foot switch 2, my clean, and then clean with the delay and reverb. See, basically all the playtime I had with this so far, just doing that unboxing, but here's what I've got set up that I could kind of immediately gig. So that's my lead. Oh yeah, there's my rhythm. So I've got my rhythm. Then my lead. And notice that you're maintaining trails and stuff. Then over on this side, I've got either a clean with lots of delay, or just a straightforward. Just very quickly up and running with the essentials that I needed to get a gig done. It would take me much longer to put together this sort of stuff with most other units and be comfortable with them. So I think they have kind of thought through these things quite well, in my opinion. Like the HX Stomp for me had a long learning curve. And you know, this can instantly integrate into a wider pedal board quite well, I think. That's my opinion on it. Let me know yours in the comments as well. The more puzzling thing was the effects for me. It's like, why would you only have a Boss Dimension, an analog delay, and a Mind Hall reverb? That is curious to me, but I'm going to assume that with updates they might add more delays, add more reverbs, add more modulation. That would make sense, I think. The other thing that was surprising for me, in a way, was that they've got this spillover between scenes, which again makes it incredibly practical and useful. So it's actually pretty ideal for immediately going on your pedal board. Now, if I'm not vomiting tomorrow, I will try and gig this and get back to you on that. The outputs thing is slightly limited, I think. So you've got an output 1 and output 2, so left and right. If I was going to be using this with an amp, I'd probably need to be able to do something else. So this is really quite a tailored thing, which is going to only work, I guess, if you're going to be going straight to your desk or straight to like an FR speaker. It's not the sort of thing that's necessarily going to integrate into a situation where you're using a real amp as well, because there, at the moment, doesn't seem to me to be a way that you could send off like cabless stuff or anything like that, as far as I can tell. if someone else has figured that out, please jump into the comments and correct that. I am in vomit fog, head fog. No, it doesn't have an OD up front. I think the use case that people are expecting is that you would pair your OD pedal with it. The transpose block does sound a little bit not great, in my opinion. I think some people have, you know, compared the pitch blocks of the Quad Cortex to other things, and they've been really impressed by it. I think if you actually put them up side by side with the Helix Poly Capo and the Digitech stuff, it actually is way more glitchy. So that's not something I'm hugely impressed with either, but I guess that doesn't really matter. I'd only be using that like in a real pinch anyway. And I think maybe for single note, like low chuggy stuff, it might be fine. But to me, it seems like they've come up with like quite an interesting product that does what it needs to do, I think. Doesn't have a screen, doesn't really matter. You can do most of it on the unit itself anyway. Is easy to get up, set up quickly, and more impressively, I guess, a small unit like this able to capture as well. So I can now go back to kind of making some presets for you guys that still have Quad Cortex, I think, because you'll be able to use my captures. So that's kind of cool. In general, I'm quite impressed by it. One of the things that was really important to me, and one of the things that I still don't like about the HX Stomp, is that you can power it with a normal kind of power supply. Nothing special needed here because you don't have a screen. It's just a 600 milliamp 9 to 12 DC. That to me is a great thing. I can just power this off of a normal power supply. Great. Connect it up to my phone quickly. Great. Sounds good. The captures sound good. Great. Doesn't have the amp modeling part of it, but is that the part that most people really like the Quad Cortex for? I don't think so. Doesn't have the plugins on it yet, but neither does the Quad Cortex, really. I guess time will tell whether that rollout continues. So I'm quite impressed by it. It doesn't really, the closest competitor is like the Kemper Player, which has, I think, 144 effects, something like that, way more effects. The Tonex just really has a compressor and a reverb, different types of reverb. So you've got plate, spring, and room, I think. So this has only got the one type of reverb, the Mind Hall, but that's quite tweakable. Yeah, I think there is a definite chunk of people that this is going to suit quite nicely, particularly my buddy Jake, who, you know, has been thinking, like, I want something to be able to go direct sometimes, but to be honest, I don't want to sink £1,200 or whatever into a Fractal FM3. You know, something like this that is less than £500, $489 on Toman. If you've got things that were like deal breakers for you, let me know. Is it as powerful as the HX Stomp? No. Does it fulfill the same use case? Not really. However, I think this is actually, with those 4 snapshots essentially, slightly more giggable for me than the HX Stomp out of the box. The other thing that I wanted to kind of say is that I think price-wise, they've kind of priced it, I think, about right. It's about the same price in HX Stomp, totally different application and, you know, using captures, which is a bit of a different way of thinking. But I think that's about, I think, fair. I guess the Tonex stuff is cheaper, but this can also create the captures on there. And I've not had much experience actually creating captures with Tonex because it's not that easy to use their software. I think most people might say that that's probably a fair comment. As well, like with the NAM player stuff, I've not really delved into that much as well, but I think it's about fair. There's a dime head player which can play 2 NAM captures, by the way, you might want to check out. But yeah, frankly, I think not everyone needs a flagship, and that's kind of what I've found over the years. You know, yes, I do gig my Helix floor sometimes, yes, I do gig the Fractal FM9 sometimes, but actually more often HX Stomp would be what I would use. Not the full-sized, most expensive unit, and I think it's nice to be able to, because there are so many people with a Quad Cortex on their board that are really kind of using it in the way that this thing is designed to be used. So I think, to me, it seems like a perfectly decent product, which is, I think, quite well designed, works really well, does the things that I think it needs to do to at least be kind of pretty fun to use, pretty seamless to use. No, it can't run the plugins. No, it can't run the amp models. No, it's not got a touchscreen. No, it's not your full Quad Cortex experience. But in a lot of ways, I actually think it's kind of a better product. Let me know your thoughts on that.